Good afternoon. This is Brian Hodson from Descartes MacroPoint. I'd like to welcome everyone to our webinar today on new capabilities and tips to improve your brokerage operation. It's great to see a lot of familiar names on board here. So just wanted to do some housekeeping, cover what we're going to talk about today. So on the housekeeping front, all the phones will be muted. We have a lot of attendees on, which is exciting, and appreciate you guys taking the time. We do have a section at the end for Q&A, so feel free, as we're going through the session here, submit questions through the tool, and we'll address those questions in that section. So today what we're going to cover is I'm going to introduce the panel. We have a couple of great panels here to go through the capabilities. We're going to touch on carrier connectivity and onboarding improvements, what customers are doing with detention, getting better visibility and management of detention, working with carriers, how brokers are using Control Tower and analytics, temperature control and temperature monitor is exciting new capability we've added, and then we're going to wrap up with capacity matching. We first started talking about that publicly at the Descartes Evolution Show back in March, and then again last month at TIA. Really had a tremendous reception, a lot of excitement around that solution. So let's get started. My name is Brian Hodson. I work on the product strategy team here at Descartes. Also with us on the panel is Ben Darren. Ben is a senior account executive at MacroPoint, and he's responsible for consulting with logistics providers and transportation divisions of companies to advise them on how MacroPoint technology can be strategically leveraged to increase revenue, used operationally to reduce cost and increase customer service excellence. He has over a decade experience in the supply chain visibility space, and he's worked with over 2,000 division heads to continues to work closely with market-leading logistics companies to implement Descartes MacroPoint technology. We also have Lori Zala. She's a senior account executive at MacroPoint. She brings over 17 years experience in the transportation industry, from fleet owner to freight broker to national account manager at FedEx Truckload Brokerage. She's a two-time President's Club Award winner at FedEx and Descartes Newcomer of the Year for 2017. Lori brings a diverse background that allows her to provide a consultative approach to creating solutions for her customers based on her real-life experience. So appreciate you guys joining. I'm looking forward to the discussion. We have a lot of good topics to cover, and also how we can help all the customers on board here are existing MacroPoint visibility customers. So the discussion, amongst ourselves, and then the Q&A and questions that come from the attendees.
Thanks for the intro, Brian.
So first we're going to start.
To it.
Thank you, Brian.
So we're going to start with carrier connectivity. And MacroPoint essentially invented the freight visibility solutions 8 years ago, and it's been a long-time innovator, continues to introduce new technology innovations in the market. Now, a few years ago, when it really was sort of more nascent and sort of creating the market, the majority of the tracking was done by cell phones. Lori, can you comment sort of what's changed in the last 18 months to change this dynamic?
Sure. So certainly as the industry has evolved, so has Descartes MacroPoint. We certainly still offer cell phone tracking, but more and more of our brokers are connecting through the other technology that lives in the industry today, such as electronic logging devices and TMSs. So ELD and TMS integrations are fast becoming the most popular way to connect. This is accelerated, of course, with the ELD mandate, and also increases how quickly larger fleets can be connected. There are benefits to both types of connections, but it is more real time because we ping that device every 15 minutes, and we're not reliant on cell phone triangulation.
Okay, no, that's good. So, riding on the ELD mandate, there's a lot more devices going out there that we can leverage, also piggybacking on investment that's already happening. Similarly with open, APIs to TMSs. Okay, good.
Yes,
and
exactly.
then, so let's dig in a bit here. What are the pros and cons to the various connection methods?
Yeah, so one of the wonderful things about MacroPoint, the reason why we get great buy-in from our carriers, is really because we do offer multiple ways for them to connect. Each connection method, of course, offers their different pros and cons, Brian. For carriers that you might only use once or twice a year, typically deploying the cell phone tracking is great because it allows for, quick connection, easy turn on with the carrier and driver. Cons certainly would be, driver could go through some dead zones or, run out of battery. So those would be maybe some of the cons from the cell phone side. With ELD, GPS, and TMS connections, you're getting, very robust, accurate data, typically accuracy within a few feet. And frequency, with those updates typically come in every 15 to 30 minutes, certainly depending on what the carriers have set for their telematics systems. Cons would be this is really for more carriers that do a lot of repeat business with our brokerage customers. So if you need to connect them to your account, it could take a few hours to a few days depending on the carrier.
Okay, so sort of easier, better carrier buy-in, more data accuracy on the ELD, GPS, and then the cell phone still, key in providing that flexibility.
Absolutely.
Good. And so we've talked about the carrier adoption and data accuracy. Lori, can you comment on how does this change the driver opt-in, which is traditionally sometimes been a bit of a challenge?
Sure. So the advantage of the newer methods is that integration and approval is actually on a carrier level. So with a single integration or activation, all the trucks in the fleet can be tracked. There's no need for a driver to opt in, and that helps compliance increase dramatically. The best thing is it also helps reduce extra calls since there are no drivers refusing opt-in. We've invested a lot in being able to add new ELDs or integrate to carrier TMS dispatch systems very quickly. And furthermore, we have integration to that provider before it's a simple approval and activation process, which brings big value.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, with the ELD mandate, there must be an explosion of providers. Ben, how many ELDs is MacroPoint connected with, and how do customers work with MacroPoint to determine which ELDs are integrated and how do they get added?
Yeah, sure. So starting with the first question, how many ELDs is MacroPoint connected to? We integrate with just around 100 different providers today, with more being currently onboarded with our teams. But 90 to 95% of the carriers in the marketplace that have purchased a telematics ELD system have really chosen one of the providers that we're already connected to. So the value there to our customers certainly would be almost an instant on with or an available instant connection with their carrier base. And then the other question, Brian, I believe you said was, how does MacroPoint work with MacroPoint to determine which ELDs are integrated or to get additional ELDs added? That's done through our activation team. We'll actually cross-reference our brokerage customers' carrier list for them. Then we'll put together an outreach program where our activation team will contact the carriers, educate them on how to connect to MacroPoint. And if one of the ELD GPS providers is not currently connected to the network, MacroPoint actually developed a universal connector to tie into those new ELD systems. So our team will ask the carrier for an introduction to the provider, then our development team will take it from there.
Okay, good. So really on expanded connections, ELDs and TMS integrations are growing rapidly, increasing the adoption from a carrier perspective, providing better data accuracy, driver opt-in. So that's great. Let's move on to some carrier enablement and onboarding, working with the customers to accelerate that. In the last 6 months, the MacroPoint has introduced improved onboarding tools and processes. Lori, can you outline these improvements and the results we're seeing?
Sure. So the Descartes MacroPoint team has improved the onboarding tools by creating automated processes, self-service tools for carriers, and also reporting metrics that the broker can review to see the progress and certainly identify issues if they should arise. The self-service tools provide educational videos for carriers, and this really ensures that they understand the reason and the benefits and really lowers the resistance around uncertainty that exists. There's also frequently asked questions online connection guides, and this helps eliminate phone calls and questions, really expediting the process. We have created essentially an intelligent registration form, which provides a workflow and form specific to that carrier. So for example, the information required to connect to, say, a cloud TMS system is going to be very different than via a Skybits ELD. So what we found is that this increases the success rate and speeds up the initial carrier registration process. And also, we've automated communications that kind of step them through the process and remind them if they've missed a milestone.
Yeah, I was on a call with a customer last week who's just coming on board, and they'd highlighted that they're really, these tools and helps them with confidence, and they hadn't really seen those from anybody else. So that's, I think, great progress. Ben, in terms of the results, what are we seeing in terms of the results of these initiatives, in terms of the automation and the processes that are benefiting MacroPoint customers?
Yeah, the improvements as well as the recommendations we provide our brokers accelerated really the carrier onboarding process. We've seen our team's ability to add carriers increase by, in some months, over 200%. These helps our customers in a few ways. First of all, for new customers, the time to value shrinks with faster carrier onboarding. The share of loads with visibility grows much faster, and they can redeploy their people on sales and growth. Second, the overall network is expanding faster, which benefits existing customers who are switching their carriers.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And in terms of, you mentioned recommendations to customers working with, the brokers. Lori, can you comment on how that improved in our learnings when we're constantly trying to improve both the tools and process and recommendations to our customer? What recommendations do we make, and maybe some best practices, customer examples you've seen to help accelerate the carrier onboarding?
Mm-hmm. So obviously information is key. Completing the carrier onboarding spreadsheet completely, including a US DOT number, a carrier contact, and really a technical contact really helps expedite the process. Another thing that I've found is ranking by volume really helps our team to prioritize the carriers that will bring the most value to the broker. And then as far as best use cases, I would say the best use cases are those that genuinely understand that this is a joint effort. The broker provides an initial communication, and then MacroPoint provides MacroPoint with that completed spreadsheet, and then assigns a dedicated person or team to work with the Descartes MacroPoint team to really accomplish the carrier compliance. And then certainly, finally, ensuring that there's an executive sponsor who will focus on success. With the self-service tools, the sponsor can see the progress and any carriers that might be lagging behind, and they can jump in early to resolve and really keep the onboarding process on track.
Okay, good. Yeah, and it's clearly driving some faster onboarding and success and feedback from the customers. So sort of summary: self-service tools for the carriers, visibility for the broker, some automation in terms of the communication, again, customer data, carrier data, getting that is key. I know, as you mentioned, providing the load volumes allows our team to prioritize the higher load volumes, prioritize those, let's say, in that first wave, again, to really maximize the time to value.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're going to move on to detention and visibility reporting. I'm going to come back to you, Lori. What are the challenges you see our customers dealing with when it comes to detention?
I hear very regularly that the biggest challenge that our broker customers face is the inability to validate in and out time. And so therefore, in the interest of maintaining good carrier relationships, often they pay detention without being able to validate it. And so without validation, of course, it's difficult to build back a shipper customer. So without a trusted data source, too often detentions turn into just too many phone calls and the disputes that take so much time to resolve. So the carrier phones about detention, the receiver claims the driver wasn't at the door, et cetera, and it just kind of goes on and spirals out of control.
Okay, so without an independent sort of data system of record for those arrival departures, or maybe delayed in getting that information, can cause a headache for the brokers.
Absolutely.
And Ben, so a number of MacroPoint customers use the solution to improve visibility and management of detention charges. Can you give us a couple of examples?
Yeah, a lot of times, our brokers will wait for the carriers to, send in an invoice. Then they bill the shipper. But with MacroPoint, some of our broker customers are being more proactive with billing the shipper because they have data to show. And sometimes carriers will not submit their detention bills, which then allows brokers to realize some additional revenue. Alternatively, we have seen some brokers actually pay their best carriers even if the carrier didn't bill them, which ends up strengthening the broker and carrier relationship.
Okay, yeah, so they're using it today, and I know there's some enhancements. Lori, can you talk about some of the enhancements being added to the solution around detention?
Sure. So one main thing is that with the ELD, GPS, and TMS connections, we are pinging those devices at 15 to 30-minute intervals, which allows us to be much more concise on in and out time. So some of those enhancements will be with our new detention-specific reporting. And this new tool will allow our customers to customize detention alerting and report settings in the system. So for example, a broker can set a custom amount of time for what they call free time. This will be a trigger for when the detention actually starts. So customers will get alerts when a carrier enters free time and then also when the free time ends. And if a carrier is still on site when that free time ends, then that's obviously when the detention clock would start and we start reporting on it. So these alerts can be automated or, for each customer, or can be received, can then be received by either the customer or the broker.
Okay. So in addition to sort of accurate system of record, the proactive alerts allows the brokers to get ahead of the issue and work more proactively.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Good. And Ben, then to taking a step back in terms of the transactional detention, are you seeing examples where brokers are using this data, the detention data, to work with their shipper customers in a more strategic way, helping improve operations?
Yeah, in fact, we've had some customers tell us that they use this as an opportunity to help their shippers invest in some better systems to help manage their pickup and deliveries to improve the overall operation, which actually in turn for the carrier that, once they had thought they had a bad reputation for keeping drivers longer than needed, have really improved and streamlined those operations to get drivers in and out faster. So we have seen some improvements with our customer's customer.
Yeah, so the brokers can look across these different delivery points, even within a customer, or maybe even across all their customers, identify, hey, you have a much higher incidence of detention, and help them improve that. Okay. Okay. Let's move on to Control Tower. I mean, the MacroPoint Control Tower provides an extremely intuitive visualization of a broker's active loads. Lori, how have you seen this being received in the customers over the last 12 months?
Sure. So the response has been outstanding. The ability to literally glance at a control tower and hone in on loads that are in jeopardy allows brokers to point their energy to those that are at risk for failure. So this essentially eliminates the need for check calling every single carrier and driver, and gives you the ability to manage by exception. You know, the other thing that we've found is that it also helps onboarding new employees onto an operations team, because with our faster growing customers, they're always adding new people, and often these employees start in the track and trace team. And the control tower interface really gives them the ability to accelerate how fast those new employees can add value and support the rapid growth.
Yeah, the employee onboarding is an interesting insight. I mean, I was speaking to at TIA, one of the customers, and they'd gone from 300 people to 900 people. I mean, one of their biggest challenges is getting those people on and productive and understanding. So something like the control tower can help them get up to speed more quickly, accelerate their learning, and contribute valuable value back to the business. And then Ben, in terms of how the different track and trace teams in our customer base use control, how does it help with different organizational structures? Different use cases would be helpful.
Sure. So depending on the broker structure is important. One example would be when a specific person or track and trace groups are broken up by specific customers or sometimes region. Those individual users can actually save a custom search filter in MacroPoint. And what that allows them the ability to do is quickly go to the control tower, click on their save view, and specifically remove all the other loads that are in their MacroPoint account, and just view their specific loads that they might be responsible for. We have customers that have set up filters to show only loads that are behind schedule with a specific carrier. So if you can almost imagine, you're in your MacroPoint control tower user interface, and you go in and say, okay, show me all loads that are behind or not going to make it being hauled by Ben Darren Trucking. They would quickly click on that save search. Everything would be filtered out and just see just those couple loads. But everybody knows Ben Darren Trucking is never behind schedule, so that won't happen.
That's right. So good. And so helping the team, depending how the team's organized, the configurable filters. Lori, what about examples where brokers have enabled a control tower for their customers and the benefits they've achieved?
Yeah, so I've gotten great feedback on that. Many of our customers have decided to create sort of a self-service option. With the support of our MacroPoint team, we can create a customer-facing portal which allows brokers' customers to have that self-service option of knowing where all of their shipments are in transit. And what this has done is it's dramatically reduced the amount of emailing and calling with the "where's my load" question. It creates a little more stickiness with the customers who get used to having that self-service functionality, especially when they expand the various customer departments that have access, such as transportation teams, operations teams, merchandisers, et cetera. Allows them to reallocate resources as necessary to drive efficiency.
Yeah, that makes sense. So in addition to productivity on the track and trace team, reducing inbound calls and strengthens the relationship, and it makes it probably stickier with those customers as well.
Absolutely.
And then being able to see the traffic and weather. I mean, everyone who sees that always thinks that's pretty cool. and determining how this impacted loads. Ben, can you talk a bit about some customers, how this has helped customers, maybe some use cases there?
Yeah, sure. We hear a lot of different examples on how this has helped some of our customers. Actually, one that was somewhat recent, customer using the tool noticed that a load had fallen behind schedule, and it was so far behind, just wasn't going to make it on time. So they were able to quickly launch the control tower tool, overlay traffic and weather, and they saw there was actually a huge traffic jam that shut down the highway. And then what they did was they immediately contacted their customer, their receiver, to notify them of the issue. Because the user was honest and explained the situation to their shipper, the shipper appreciated it and was actually able to unload some other trucks and then send his crew home without having to pay any overtime by keeping the crew late because they were waiting out for a no-show truck. That's one of the biggest things we hear from shippers and receivers that of the MacroPoint value is it allows their LSPs to provide them with efficient information quickly. And even if it's bad news, they'd rather them get that information from them than them having to call them saying, "Hey, where's the truck? What's going on?"
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then in terms of turning the control tower, sort of enabling it for the track and trace team or enabling it for customers, are there any additional integration requirements, Lori?
No, not at all. The control tower view is housed in the MacroPoint standalone user interface, and all of our customers, whether they're utilizing MacroPoint integrated into their TMS or not, can have access to that MacroPoint user interface.
Okay. And is it it's included in the platform? Is there an extra cost? How does that work?
Yeah, Brian. It comes with your investment with MacroPoint. It's just a feature that you're able to access through the system.
Okay, good. So control tower, really enables that managed by exception, increasing productivity both on the tracing team as well as customer. Helps with employee onboarding. You have the configurable filters to accommodate the different organization teams. And again, that self-serve of the customer is going to provide a better experience for them and reduce inbound calls. Okay, let's move on to talk about temperature monitoring. Again, this is with more smart devices out there and being able to provide that feedback into the brokers to give them sort of control. Ben, can you talk about, hey, MacroPoint's introducing this capability and describe how it works? What's required from the carriers, and is there MacroPoint required hardware? Just give it a bit of an overview. It'd be great, Ben.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so through our current integrations, we are able to connect to a carrier's TMS system, which, if they are already collecting temp readings from the refrigerated unit, we can consume that information for our customers. We also are now integrated directly into the refrigerated unit. This will allow us to pull temps, right from the unit systems that include single zone and multiple zones. The broker could set some temperature thresholds, minimums and maximums, for which temperatures need to be maintained. We are also able to collect ambient temperature, and if the temperature drifts outside of the configured thresholds, MacroPoint can send alerts to the broker and sometimes the carrier, and this enables really the driver to be notified of some issues if there are any. This also reduces some of the need for the driver to actually stop and take temperature during a trip, making them more efficient. Our customers have said these stops can take, sometimes 15 minutes, 30 minutes, even 45 minutes, and is required to do this almost every 3 hours. So you can see how maybe automating the process would be, very efficient for for all parties.
Yeah, so certainly avoid sort of compliance issues, lost loads, limiting that paperwork, and with that, limiting stops is going to also reduce the hours that the transit time. Good. Okay, and Ben, what about some examples, where customers are using this? So we've been working with a number of customers. We're introducing the capability more generally this month. So some examples of how we're working with customers to get this refined.
Yeah, we actually have a food producer that sometimes has to take product back because when the receiver does maybe a temp check at delivery, they'll check the trailer and they'll say, nope, this trailer's too warm. We're not accepting this load. And sometimes receivers, they might take the temperature wrong. They're not using proper equipment, or wherever the case may be. So in the past, our customer would actually have to take the product back, and they'd be out the cost of that product, because a lot of times they might have to destroy it. And sometimes those costs are really over $150,000 or more per truckload. Now they can provide proof of the temp through the duration of the delivery, which really saves them from having to eat the cost of the load, no pun intended. We also have a chemical company that transports high-value chemicals that need to be maintained at a temperature of between 90 to 110 degrees. And if they have issues where the temperature compliance runs outside of that, they actually need to return the load and remix the chemicals to a lower grade, resulting in wasted transportation costs, lost revenue, and at the end of the day, a frustrated customer.
Yeah, so huge benefits. And then, one of the things that's important is how this data gets shared, with the consignee, with the customer, the broker. Lori, what are the options in terms of, alerts and information that gets shared?
Sure. So we have lots of options for our broker customers. We can send the data directly to the broker, and then you can filter and determine what you choose to share with your shipper customer, or you can have us send the data directly. And I think this flexibility is important to help serve the broker customers in the most effective way. Some alerts can be sent to the brokers, and they get those alerts, and oftentimes they can resolve the issues before a notification needs to be shared with the shipper customer. But others choose to send that same notification to the shipper customer to have that complete, visibility on all levels.
Okay, yep. No, that sounds good. Also, I can imagine with access to more additional environmental data, things like atmospheric pressure or altitude, humidity, these could be factored into the impact on the goods in transit. So a lot more innovation potential there.
No doubt.
From us. So, okay. Well, now we're going to move on to capacity matching, our last sort of section for this afternoon. And as I mentioned earlier, this is really obviously a very hot area with the capacity crunch out there. And Descartes MacroPoint's been working on this for quite a while, and then started talking to customers, and then more formally at Evolution, which is the Descartes annual user conference, and then last month at TIA. Really has created a lot of excitement, and we have a set of pilot customers. Ben, can you just give a high-level view of an outline of what's coming and available later this quarter?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's very exciting time here at MacroPoint. We're offering a very comprehensive capacity matching tool for our brokerage customers that will really allow you guys to visualize your own data to help better select available carriers for loads. But we are also introducing along with that what we're calling the co-op, which allows you to really share unused capacity in your network with other MacroPoint broker customers that are using the system to really receive exponentially more data back to help find capacity for loads that need to be booked. The new system will remove wasted time, wasted phone calls, empty miles to pick up, because the system will actually show you what available capacity will be in the area and historical data of the lane the carrier likes to run to really give you the best chance for a complete match. It's exciting.
Yeah, and I was speaking to a customer earlier this week on it, and one of them, they were similarly describing, hey, today it's calls and tribal knowledge, but they really like the verifiable data and the scope and scale of the MacroPoint network. So that was exciting to hear. The co-op is extremely interesting. Ben, can you drill down a bit more on how it works?
Absolutely, yeah, you're right. It's interesting and super exciting here. So the co-op works is all the customers that are using the capacity tool in the co-op will share double-blind data on their own carriers with the network. So this kind of breaks down to, number one, historical booked loads, so knowing where carriers and trucks like to go, and current booked loads to show the forward-looking capacity, knowing a truck is delivering in a certain area on a certain day. This data is then used to help show the user, what trucks and equipment will be available on a certain day and time for a load. You'll also be able to visualize the data to confirm if that truck likes to actually move the load on that lane. And the data, again, is double blind, so customers will never know which broker shared the data, and the truck location will actually come back as a radius, so you won't know exactly what the customer that truck was picking up or delivering to.
No, that sounds that's very innovative. What feedback have you received from customers so far? I mean, can you share what the expected benefits will be? Time savings, booking more, growing revenue, better rates on the freight, reducing deadhead miles, those sort of things.
Yeah, it's really all of the above. It will really accomplish all that and more. Obviously, this is brand new, so I can't provide a ton of stories yet. We're just rolling it out now. But I can share a quick story with you. I was just thinking about this. One of our very early beta testers that was helping us, kick the tires on the product, told us that he was really excited about the solution, and unfortunately we had to tell him that we had to take the product back from him because we were about to go into commercial development. And he pleaded to ask us to keep it for a little bit longer because the visualization of even his own data was just so powerful that he didn't want to give it up. He wanted to continue using it, even though it was still just a beta product.
Oh, that's great. That's good. And again, there's a lot of activity around the current phase. So, Lori, in terms of alternatives, many brokers use public load boards. How do you see this relative, the capacity matching relative to other options?
Sure. So I think the main difference is that public load boards are just full of bad data, because oftentimes the source for that data is nothing more than a load search that's been done, not on actual equipment moving to a target market, but maybe predicting a future opportunity for that carrier. So what this does is it creates a false sense of available capacity in that target market. And what MacroPoint does is it uses that real load tracking data to provide an accurate view of available equipment by equipment type, and also provides that historical data for carriers, knowing where they like to run and utilizing that to everyone's benefit.
Yeah, and with that data, with the tracking and the actual loads being moved, we get better visibility, so 36, 72 hours and beyond, which should drive also better match and lower rate.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
And Ben, can you talk a bit about what the pricing is for capacity matching?
Yeah, so again, this is a brand new product that we're going to be rolling out. So pricing is going to be tiered based on volume. and a different bundle of features. So the beta pilot is actually active now with 10 customers, and the co-op volume is increasing every week as we add new brokers to the beta run. So what I would recommend is anybody on the call today, certainly reach out to your MacroPoint rep to schedule a demo. And that way you don't lose out on really getting in early on this opportunity, because we will have some best pricing packages that will fit your operation for getting in, obviously at the early stage. So certainly reach out to those people after the call today.
That's good. Yeah, and if you want, there's also, if you go to the MacroPoint website, you can there's a drop down coming soon, fill out a form, and we'll get you the right resource to really get into, as Ben said, what's the best sort of use cases, how it's going to fit in your operation. Okay, well, thanks, Ben, Lori, for the discussion. I think it's been very helpful. Now, I think there's a lot of fun in terms of looking at the questions coming in from the attendees. There's a lot of activity, so I'm going to start going through those. Again, if you have questions, feel free to submit them through the tool, and we have some time here, a few minutes before the end, I think we should be able to address most of them. Okay, so here's the first question. So today, one of your competitors announced a capacity matching solution. How is MacroPoint thinking about that, and how are you guys different?
Yeah, I'll take that. So, our competitor is, what they're really trying to do is disrupt brokers. The shipper carrier network is inherently a smaller subset of the national carrier population. So a broker's value, to the industry has been, from inception, to give shippers access to otherwise unavailable capacity. Our competitor solution does not support this concept at all. However, MacroPoint continues to find a way to support our brokerage customers by arming them with tools to operate more efficiently while simultaneously helping the shipper community, empowering their third-party partners.
Well, and I think another thing, Ben, is that, by focusing on only carriers within an existing shipper network, they're going to be making it more difficult for carriers to find new inroads to an already competitive shipper environment. I mean, this works as a detriment to small fleets, and that those ladies and fellows make up the backbone of the trucking community. And, certainly disrupting brokerage is a very bad thing for shippers. The inherently focused approach shippers take within a carrier community makes it challenging for small carriers to compete for business. I mean, today, shippers employ third parties to manage these relationships for them and bring them competitive rates. Disrupting the third-party relationship, and that will then just drive up carrier rates, and those providers already within the shipper network have less competition-driven cost controls.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and also, all the specialization, and expertise that brokers bring in is critical also to, the shippers they can't build that out all themselves. They leverage that expertise to be successful. Okay, good. So here's another question that's come in. Do you anticipate more smart trailers over the next year or so? Ben?
Yeah, I guess it depends on how you define the smart trailers, but yeah, we are seeing more of these technologies being invested into the trailer, and MacroPoint is working with those providers to connect to those systems, like we talked a little bit earlier about connecting to, in one example, the refrigerated units directly to the trailer. So yeah, I certainly see those growing in the future.
Yeah, I think there's just a lot of innovation with, the ELD mandates driving obviously a need from a compliance standpoint, but I think putting that infrastructure out there, there'll be a lot of new things that we'll be able to leverage in terms of data. So here's another question. It was around carrier connections and carrier enablement. what are the costs that the carrier will have to connect? I don't
So
know,
I'll
Lori, you
answer
want to
that.
cut at that?
Yeah, sure. So with regard to carrier enablement, we actually don't charge the carriers anything to join our network as far as with their ELDs or TMSs. So, that's part of the core service that's provided through the account.
Okay, good. So we, again, lower the barriers to get those carriers on.
Sure,
that's
absolutely.
Really, the size of the MacroPoint network is a key asset for the brokers. Okay, back to ELD. With the ELD mandate going on in the enforcement phase, have you seen an increase in the amount of carriers that are able to tie into your tracking via ELD versus cell tower?
Mm-hmm.
Ben?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, certainly an increase. I mean, what you're seeing is, the mid to large tier carriers that are investing in technology, are investing in telematics that have GPS and ELD connected. However, what you got to realize is that GPS is not necessarily part of the initial mandate. So the smaller tier carriers, the owner operators, the less than 50 truck fleets who make up a big chunk of the carriers that move freight for brokers, they're going to go with the least expensive option for the ELD, and those options do not connect, don't have a GPS connection to the ELD. So you're still always going to need the ability to track cell phones. So that's not going away.
Okay, good. We'll move on here. This is sort of a multi-part question. The control tower obviously has some sort of ETA calculation built in. So there's two questions related to that. First of all, does the ETA take into account hours of service? And do you have the ability to return the ETA back into the TMS? Lori, maybe you want to take a cut.
Sure. So a couple things. First of all, hours of service is not something that we've currently collected information on. So we will make the smart assumption that when a driver picks up a load, they are able to run that load from origin to final destination. Now, you do have the ability within the control tower to be able to set thresholds for the amount of hours that a shipment can be on the road. So in the case of like a solo driver, you would want to put in, 11 hours of driving time. Perhaps with regard to a team, you could identify a longer driving window, 22 to 24 hours, because of the continuous service. But yes, that is available through the control tower. And I'm sorry, I didn't hear kind of the second part of that question.
Just can it be fed back into the TMS, the ETA?
Yeah. And again, I would say the answer is with many TMSs, yes, it can be, but it would be certainly TMS specific. So my recommendation would be to reach out to your MacroPoint account representative, and they will work with you and your TMS partner to determine if that feature is available for that particular TMS.
Yeah, and I was talking to a provider, pretty sophisticated TMS, and they were using, they were calculating the ETA based on the data that MacroPoint was feeding them, but they were also looking at pulling that ETA back in because, taking into account the traffic. So there was some enhancements in weather that MacroPoint provides, because theirs was simply based on sort of miles and speed. So that, I think, because of a more accurate ETA, they're looking at feeding that back into the TMS.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then let's see. There is. Let's see. With capacity mapping, it's a matching tool, or does it provide real-time visibility of all available trucks within the broker network or the MacroPoint network? I don't know, Ben, if you got that, or.
Yeah, I can. Let me take a stab at that if I'm hearing the question right. So the capacity matching tool is separate from our visibility tool. So your MacroPoint track and trace system is one product. The capacity matching tool is something totally different. So it is going to show you available capacity within your own historical data and forward-looking capacity data that you're sharing with us, and we're going to visualize that. Also, it's going to show you available capacity through the co-op that we talked about earlier. But yeah, if I'm hearing it correctly, it's not going to show you live tracking. That's a separate product from MacroPoint that has nothing to do with the actual capacity tool. Brian, I don't know if that is clear, but if you want to,
yeah,
add on to that,
so the tracking, the tracking can be used to enhance the predictive capacity of to provide a more enriched data. So if that load is being tracked, the ETA and the accuracy will be enriched if it's one of the loads that's getting tracked through the visibility tool. Okay. There's another question really on the control tower. Would like to get a view of the traffic. Back, I'm not going to jump back, but there's on the top left of that filter, there's a traffic and weather switch that can be turned on, and along this top also tools to say, show me only late loads, at-risk loads, those sort of things. So what I'd suggest, we'll follow up that specifically. We can set up a specific demo, and if you have similar questions of sort of other capabilities that you didn't see on the screen, we can set something up to make sure you get addressed and all your questions answered on that front. Okay. Here's another question. When do you see the Aljex MacroPoint integration upgrade happening? And I can answer that question. So the enhanced integration has been completed. Right now we're working with a few joint customers to validate and test. And so really in the next week or so, we'd expect any other customers that want to leverage that capability, that'll be available. So again, I would touch base with either your MacroPoint or your Aljex contact to get the latest and sort of put a plan in for your business. Okay, so we have a few more minutes here. Another question about showing an example of traffic. Here's a question on control tower. Does the control tower currently integrate with TMS systems? And if so, which ones?
Yeah, I can certainly take a stab at that. So it depends on the TMS. A lot of our TMS partners have integrated the tool to where you're able to click the MacroPoint button right inside their system, which launches the MacroPoint tracking map right inside their TMS. And through there, you are able to access the control tower view. So it is somewhat integrated back into the TM. We'll have to, if you have a specific TMS vendor you want to reach out to us, and we can talk through the integration. Please go ahead and do that.
Okay, good. And here's another question in terms of data and integrating with carriers. Is the data pushed to MacroPoint from the carrier as the status changes, or does MacroPoint pull the data at predetermined times? How does that work? Lori?
Yeah, I don't know if we lost Lori. I can answer, Brian, if you want.
Sure.
Yeah, so it's actually can be done both ways depending on how we're connected to the carrier. So with the carrier ELD connections, we're reaching out to the carrier system to consume whatever tracking data is there. And in some cases, if it's a TMS connection, we do have the capability to consume the feed as they're pushing it. So, it just depends on the carrier and how it's set up. But a lot of times in most cases, it's us going to their system to grab the data.
Okay. And then a similar question, Ben, on temp alerts, proactively pushed as the temperature fluctuates or collected and pulled from at predetermined times.
Yeah. So again, it's both. So it really depends on the connection method and which way we're the carrier or the system has allowed us to connect.
Okay, good. And then related again to the control tower integrated to TMS is what about integrating into existing customer portals and providing? There's a couple questions on this.
Can you repeat
Sure,
the question?
Yeah, can the control tower be integrated into, so hey, I'm a broker, I'm providing a portal to my customer which may have a number of functions in it. Can the control tower be integrated into that portal?
Sure. So actually, yes. One of the nice things about the control tower when you set up a customer-facing portal is your customer will get basically the same view that you have. There are a few exceptions to that. They would never have direct access to a driver's cell phone. That would be privated. But they would actually have that same control tower view that the broker has. And that would be specific to that particular shipper's book of business that was shared with that broker.
Okay, excellent, very good. Okay, I think there's some duplicate questions here, and we're coming up to 2 o'clock. I want to respect everyone's time. So the questions that we did not answer, so we ran out of time, which is, I guess good and bad, a lot of interest, but good to be able to answer everyone's questions if we could. We will follow up specifically with you. We have a log of the questions, so rest assured we'll make sure they get answered with you. I want to appreciate and thank everyone, the participants, customers on the call and the questions that came in, and also Ben and Lori for giving some great insights into the capabilities. Thanks very much, everyone, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.